Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over a big snowstorm which is going to be going from the Rockies all the way to parts of the Great Lakes and the Northeast. Some big cities could be impacted with multiple inches of snowfall, maybe even closer to 6 or more inches of snowfall. We're going to be talking about all of that and more in today's video and giving you another update on this system. So here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like, and you can see it is actually fairly active, especially in the western United States, although in the eastern United States it is quite inactive right now. We have some avalanche warnings in effect for parts of Washington, especially western Washington. We also have some winter weather advisories in parts of western Montana and some winter storm watches in effect for western South Dakota, southern Montana, and northern Wyoming. We have more winter weather advisories in southern Colorado and northern New Mexico. A few freeze warnings in effect for western Colorado, as well as some frost advisories for northern Kansas. We have flood watches in effect for southern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, and southern Alabama. And then in northwestern Michigan, we have a few freeze warnings which are currently in effect. Yesterday, we had a high temperature in Zapata County Airport in Texas. They got to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. We had a low temperature in Berthoud Pass, Colorado, where they got to 3 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest precipitation report was 4 miles northwest of Throckmorton, Texas, where they got 2.52 inches of rainfall. And the highest snowfall report was 2 miles northeast of Rob Roy Reservoir in Wyoming. And those areas saw maybe upwards of 12 to even 18 inches of snowfall, like in this particular report. And then also in parts of the Northeast, we did see quite a bit of snowfall, over 6 to 12 inches in some of these areas. We had a few reports even upwards of 14 inches of snowfall in New Hampshire and Vermont. So really, two big storms on just one day, which is quite rare for mid-April. Here's what the current European model is showing. We're going to show you what the European model is showing, and then also what the GFS and Canadian model are showing. They have kind of narrowed in a little bit more, so the GFS, the European, and the Canadian all strengthened the amount of snowfall they're showing. So they are showing more snowfall now than yesterday, although there is, of course, there is still a gap in terms of how much snowfall is actually going to fall, especially over this area right here where there's a lot of uncertainty. And also on the northern edge of this, there is a lot of uncertainty as well as to whether you'll actually get in on some snowfall or some decent snowfall. And that's all going to depend on how far north this system actually tracks. The European is one of the more northern tracks, and the GFS and Canadian take more of a southern, weaker track to this storm. So you can see our little cold front, which is hanging right back through here. Behind it is some cold air, and this is just going to be moving down through parts of the United States. It's going to pick up on some energy that's going to be out through parts of the southeast, and that's going to strengthen into a low pressure and then eventually move up into the northeast. So where exactly that happens is going to be very important. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. So this is by Sunday in the early afternoon. So tomorrow in the early afternoon, we're looking at some snowfall now crossing into the United States over parts of southern Canada and also into parts of North Dakota and Montana, as well as a little bit of Minnesota, also getting in on some snowfall, but really not a big deal just yet. This is by Monday or in the early morning. We're dealing with that snow still up for parts of Montana, South Dakota, Minnesota, also even back through parts of Wisconsin as well. And we could be dealing with actually potentially heavy snowfall in parts of central Montana, especially with this event, where we could be dealing with moderate or even heavy snowfall at times. That could accumulate up to about 12 inches of snowfall in some of those areas, so we do want to watch out for that threat, especially in the higher elevations. And this is going to be by Monday in the early afternoon. So now parts of Wyoming, Nebraska, Iowa are now starting to get in on some of the snowfall. You can see that it is still too warm for snow if you live back through parts of the Great Lakes. So still too warm back through there, but you're going to start to see that as we move through the day on Tuesday. This is in the early morning hours of Tuesday. Still all rain for those areas around the Great Lakes, snowing back through the Central Plains. You'll see that now we're starting to get a low pressure to actually form over parts of the Tennessee Valley. So this is very crucial. The GFS actually forms that low pressure a little bit further to the north and to the east. And the fact that it does that means that you're not going to see as much snowfall in an area like Chicago or Kansas City, because you won't have as much energy with this type of storm. But if we were to have the Europeans option where you form a low pressure now, that means that we're going to have stronger snowfall rates. We're also going to have more snowfall because of those heavier snowfall rates, and we're going to have windier conditions as well. So depending on exactly where this cold front turns into a low pressure system is going to be very, very important, and that area is going to be one of the places that gets heavy snowfall out of this event. So this is by Tuesday in the early afternoon. You can see it's all snow for many of these areas into northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, southern Iowa, northern Missouri, eastern Kansas, according to the European model. That continues to head further to the east. So now your low pressure is down through the Ohio River Valley, and you can see some of that snowfall back through northwestern Illinois, eastern and northern, northwestern Indiana, northern and eastern Illinois, and southern Michigan by this point. And for the European model, you're going to see on the snowfall that it really kind of hammers into areas like Detroit, where it shows upwards of 12 inches of snowfall. So very heavy snowfall rates if that were to be the case. You can see that low pressure up through parts of Pennsylvania and New York, and that's going to continue to head to the north and to the east. That's going to wrap in a little bit more of cold air on the back end, and that's going to allow some of the snowfall to actually some of this rainfall to switch over to snow in western Pennsylvania and western New York as well. And you're going to see that right now. You can see that by Thursday in the early morning hours, we have some of that snowfall breaking out in upstate New York, mainly in higher elevations as well as areas that are closer to the Great Lakes. And then by Thursday in the early afternoon, this is when it's starting to get a little bit more widespread over parts of New York, Vermont, and even into areas like New Hampshire and northwestern Maine as well. That cold air is still in parts of the Northeast, so we could still be dealing with lingering light snowfall by Friday in the early morning hours over some of these areas in New England and upstate New York, so we do want to watch out for that. But other than that, that pretty much wraps up that storm. So it's going to be a multi-day, cross-country type of an event. Here's what the European model is showing, and really drastic numbers over parts, especially of southern Michigan. That looks to be the bullseye according to the European model. Now, I'm not really too concerned with the actual numbers as of right now, just because we are still 3 or 4 days out. I usually want to be within that 48 to 72 hour time frame to start talking about actual snowfall ranges in terms of the numbers, but this does show you a good indicator of where the bulk of the snowfall is expected to be. So you can see one bullseye back through southern Ontario, southern Michigan, northern Indiana, and also into northeastern Illinois. Lighter amounts back through the Central Plains, but it's still a fairly decent thumping of snowfall for mid-April, and by this point it would actually be late April. Past the 20th is when this snow event would be taking place. You can also see some of that snowfall back through into the parts of the interior Northeast, northern New England, and those general regions. So I'm going to circle where the heaviest snowfall is on the European model. Now look at what the GFS model does. Instead of bringing that snowfall to the north, it stays with that kind of cold front type of look all the way until it hits Michigan and Ohio. So you do see a little bit of strengthening back through there, but by that time you already have that low pressure forming over here instead of like what the European model was doing, where it formed the low pressure back through here. So now areas like Chicago and Kansas City are missing out on the drastic numbers that they were seeing before, on those heavy snowfall numbers that they were seeing before. Now they're maybe looking at upwards of up to 2 inches at the most. So that would be kind of the high-end snowfall if the GFS model were to be correct. It also doesn't show as much snowfall in the Northeast as well. So the GFS on just pretty much every level is lower and weaker than what the European model is showing, and the Canadian model is further north than this. Definitely one of the more northern tracks where you can see the extent of that 2-inch line fairly far to the north, but At least it does also show a pocket of heavy snowfall back through southern and southeastern Michigan. So we are getting some consistency that somewhere over here, all of the models show the bulk and heaviest of their snowfall. But what we're really not sure of is whether the heaviest snowfall will be 12 to 14 inches or whether it'll be 4 to 6 inches. So we are expecting snowfall nonetheless in many of these areas. The Canadian model brings back that snowfall over these areas in the Central Plains and the Western Lakes. But other than that, there are still many differences within these models. If we look at the Weather Prediction Center's forecast over the next 72 hours, so this only goes through Tuesday morning, this is the chances of seeing 2 or more inches of snowfall. And you can see that the heaviest or the highest values are back through northern Kansas, and then, of course, back through the Rockies, where you have a very high likelihood of that occurring, and almost all of that is actually from this system, not from the last system. That has all passed by. Now we're dealing with just exclusively this upcoming system. So if we move on to the next frame here, you can see that for Tuesday, we are expecting this is the chances of seeing a quarter inch of liquid turn into snow or sleet, which is generally a good benchmark for 2.5 inches of snowfall or sleet. So this is the chances that would happen, and you can see that their chances are quite low just now, but I'm pretty sure that's just because they aren't as confident in it. So they have a 30 to 50% chance over southeastern Michigan of seeing 2.5 inches of snowfall or greater, roughly that, and then this would be for Wednesday, and you can see that the chances of seeing 2.5 inches or more of snowfall is fairly light or moderate over parts of the interior Northeast, upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, all dealing with some chance of that occurring, 10 to 30%, but you do have that 30 to 50% area over parts of New Hampshire, Maine, and also into the Adirondacks in upstate New York. And then if you even want to look at further out, you can see that for Thursday, they actually have a 10 to 30% chance even for parts of northern Maine, northern New Hampshire, northern Vermont, and also into the Adirondacks in northern New York of seeing 2.5 inches or more of snowfall, roughly that. So this is gonna wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.